Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the SimNFL show. Real talk about fake sports. I am your host and commissioner. You can call me Pierce. Today we are covering all of the Week 12 action of the 2026 season of the Pro Football Sim over at SimSN. If you're unfamiliar, come check us out on the website and on Discord. We would love to have you. So as always, we'll begin today's show with the stats and summaries from all of the week's games, culminating in my choices for the players of the week. We'll do a quick injury update, look at the NFL standings, and then our feature today is another edition of Pierce's Tears, in which I openly weep on camera for the state of our country. Wait, sorry, I'm being told that's the wrong kind of tears. This is actually the segment where I group the SimNFL teams into esoteric groupings with commentary for your entertainment. The other stuff I'll do off camera. Anyway, after that, we'll of course preview the upcoming Week 13 games. Great show ahead of us, and without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So, Week 12 is, of course, Simsgiving. So, the first of our games were the Dallas Cowboys hosting, in this case, the Buffalo Bills, and they were able to come away with the 31-29 victory. First touchdown came in the first quarter. Bam Bozeman, of course, in for the injured Cecilio Fuentes. Hit his best target for the day, Antonio Arellano, for a 36-yard gain, and that led to a Chris Brooks 1-yard touchdown run, giving the Cowboys the early 7-3 lead. In the second quarter, Yusei Asensio of the Bills had a 23-yard pass to Joseph Jones. Then Asensio ran it for 32 yards, then followed that up with an 11-yard touchdown to Donald Kelly, putting the Bills back on top. Dallas would respond on a 10-play, 75-yard drive, ending with Bozeman finding Arellano for a 2-yard touchdown and a 14-10 Cowboys lead. Before the half, Buffalo was driving again. They got all the way to the Dallas 22-yard line. But with 1:06 left in the half, Asensio was picked off by Amaro Rodriguez and denied the chance to regain the lead going into the locker room. Early in the third quarter, a Bam Bozeman interception by Gary Lindblad led to a Buffalo 50-yard field goal, tightening the deficit to just one. Bozeman would throw another interception actually on the very next drive as well. That one occurred near midfield, but then rookie Buddy Hayes stepped up with a big play, sacking Asensio for a big loss, and ultimately the Dallas defense forced a punt. There was a wild sequence later on in the third quarter. Jason Smothers of the Cowboys returned a punt past midfield. He was hit and fumbled. The ball was picked up by his teammate, tight end Lou Jackson, who took the ball all the way to the Buffalo 22-yard line. And that set up Bozeman for another touchdown pass to Arellano. That made it 21-13 at that point after the extra point. Donald Kelly, though, immediately returned the ensuing kickoff 96 yards for a touchdown. Mickey Brogdon was stuffed on the ensuing two-point conversion, so that left it at 21-19. Then in the fourth quarter, Dallas pulled further ahead. They had another great punt return, this one from Jorge Mendez, all the way to the Bills' 11-yard line, and that led to a Chris Brooks 6-yard touchdown run, with the crucial extra point making it a 9-point lead with about 3:35 to go in the game. The Bills would then drive 70 yards in 11 plays, Asensio finding Jan Summers for a 9-yard touchdown pass. But the extra point would get them within 2, and then time would expire, and the Cowboys would escape with the 31-29 win. So Arellano, a great day, 123 catches and 2 touchdowns as the Bills defense focused on shutting down Christopher Lee. Amaro Rodriguez with a key interception, and the Cowboys escaped the upset attempt with the 2-point victory on Simsgiving. The second Simsgiving game, of course, was the Lions. Today they hosted the Packers, and it was the Packers that came out on top 35-29, finishing a sweep of the Lions in 2026. Detroit scored on their first drive with Tremaine Craig running it in from 8 yards out. The extra point was missed, so the Lions had the early 6-0 lead. In the second quarter, before halftime, Green Bay drove 75 yards in 9 plays, ending with Joseph Garibay hitting Ramek Phelps With a 6-yard touchdown pass with just 6 seconds left on the first half clock, Green Bay would go into the locker room with a 10-9 halftime lead. In the third quarter, Garibay would throw his one interception of the game to Mike Presley. Presley returning it all the way to the Packer 12-yard line, but the Packer defense would hold, in fact, Philip Wilcox sacking Hansen for a big loss, leading to the Lions kicking a field goal to take the lead 12-10. Then, after a Green Bay punt, Huey Ash of the Lions, newly traded from New England, took a punt return 90 yards to the house, making it 18-10. Lions would miss a second extra point attempt, though, so the lead would stay at 8. Green Bay would get a field goal on their next drive, and then on the Lions' next possession, Randall Hansen, scrambling, fumbles the ball. It was recovered by Packers linebacker Steve McIntosh, and that would lead to a Carl Frost, a 3-yard touchdown run. Garibay would throw to Nwachukwu for the 2-point conversion, making it 21-18 at that point. Packers on top. And then Frost would score on his own a 20-yard touchdown in the fourth quarter, extending the Packers' lead to 28-18. After a Detroit field goal to make it a one-score game again, Green Bay with an absolutely back-breaking drive, 75 yards in 11 plays. Garibay throwing a touchdown pass to Carl Frost from 7 yards out to make the score 35-21 at that point. Detroit would respond, Hansen finding Thomas Bullock for an 18-yard gain, Bianchi breaking off a 44-yard run, his longest of the game, and then Tremaine Craig would take it the rest of the way with a 13-yard touchdown. Hansen found rookie Tony Sherman for a 2-point conversion, cutting the lead to 6. But after the kickoff, the Packers would get 2 key first downs, which was enough for them to run out the clock and preserve the win. So Garibay, 41 of 52 in his return from injury, 382 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. 128 of those went to Nwachukwu, 109 to Ramek Phelps, as the Packers hang on to pull off the 6-point victory and get a second win over their division rival. Lions still leading in the North, but Packers now just a game back with a tiebreaker in hand. Moving on now to the Sunday games, we had a great potential playoff preview where the Broncos and Dolphins went to overtime before the Broncos ultimately came out on top. Denver would actually punt on their first possession, but Jeremy Moreland would muff the punt, and Denver would recover, setting up London for a short touchdown run from 6 yards out and the early lead. Miami would respond, Hammonds finding Lawrence Sanders for a 36-yard gain, then Kenny White for another 15. That would lead to a Juan Mora 4-yard touchdown run, and the extra point would tie the game. But Raymond Stelly of the Broncos would return the ensuing kickoffs 94 yards for a touchdown, putting the Broncos back on top immediately without London even having to take the field. Miami responded again, Hammonds finding Kenny White for a 46-yard gain, and then White again 3 plays later. They connected for a 5-yard touchdown to tie the game up again. In the second quarter, Dolphins would take their first lead, Hammonds finding Ramirez for a 36-yard pass, then a Giafor for 12, and then Ramirez again, a 4-yard touchdown catch. 21-14, Miami up at that point. Going to the second half now. In the third quarter, Peter Linden found his wide receiver Tyler Geese for a 20-yard gain, and then the Broncos would run the ball 8 of the next plays until Johnson ultimately plunged into the end zone from 1 yard out. They would miss the 2-point conversion. At that point, the Broncos would be up 26-21. Miami, though, responding again. Hammonds with the big play ball. Patrick Hatley, he found him for a 13-yard gain to convert a 3rd and 4. And then on 3rd and 16, Hammonds found Jamie Ramirez for a 36-yard gain. Ultimately, would find Ramirez again for a 4-yard touchdown pass. He threw the 2-point conversion successfully to Kenny White, and Dolphins were up 29-26. Late in the fourth quarter, Denver driving, trying to win or tie. They would get into the Dolphins' territory, but consecutive holding calls brought up a 3rd down and 30. Now, they weren't able to convert, but Peter London was able to hit Ryan Johnson for a 22-yard gain, enough to make the field goal a little more comfortable, and Rob Downing would nail it from 34 yards out, tying the game at 29 with 1:03 to go. Dolphins, though, almost had a chance to end it in regulation. Hammonds found Sanders for an 18-yard gain, and then there were 3 straight incompletions, but on 4th and 10, with just seconds left, and the ball at the Denver 47-yard line, Hammonds found his tight end again, Ramirez, for an 11-yard gain that would have made it about a 53-yard field goal attempt, but time ran out before they could get the kickoff, and we went to overtime. Dolphins got the ball first, but Hammonds was sacked by Andrew Rahi, and that ultimately led to a punt. The Broncos would take over. London would find his tight end Carmine Rhodes for a 13-yard gain to convert a big 3rd down. And then Bruce Utash was called for roughing the passer, adding on another 15. Broncos would get into comfortable field goal range, and then Rob Downing would hit his 4th field goal of the day, this one from 33 yards out, to win it in overtime. So, a game that absolutely lived up to the billing. Raymond Stelly, 90 yards on 6 catches and over 100 kick return yards, including a touchdown. Jamie Ramirez with 2 touchdown catches, Kenny White with a touchdown catch and a 2-point conversion. Rob Downing ultimately scoring 14 points total for the Broncos, including 2 critical field goals, one to tie it in regulation and one to win it in overtime. The Eagles and Giants fought in a tough NFC East clash, with the Giants coming out on top by a couple points. Giants would do this despite missing a couple of field goals, including a 29-yard shank on their very first drive. Then the Giants' second possession, Stokes would throw an interception to Billy Wright, but Eagles were not able to convert as Andrew Moncrief threw an interception right back. Giants would get a field goal after that final takeaway. Then Leonard Vaughn would take the ensuing kickoff 103 yards for a touchdown, giving the Eagles the early lead 7-3. In the second quarter, Moncrief was picked off again, this time by linebacker Anthony Singleton. Singleton took it all the way to the Eagles' 15-yard line. That led to a Perez 2-yard touchdown run, putting the Giants on top. In the second quarter, the Giants would miss another field goal. In fairness, this one at least was from 57 yards out. Eagles also unable to turn that into points as Moncrief threw his 3rd interception of the day, this one to Matthew Bradshaw. Off of that interception, Stokes would find Paul Canna for a 23-yard gain, and ultimately would sneak the ball into the end zone from 1 yard out, putting the Giants up 17-7 at that point. Later in the third quarter, Jonathan Perez had his best run of the day, a 59-yard touchdown run, putting the Giants up 24-10 at that point. Eagles would respond, though, going 70 yards in 10 plays. Moncrief acquitting himself well with 5 completions for 56 yards, including a 4-yard touchdown pass to Ronald Spencer. Al-Sadek then ran it in for a 2-point conversion, making it 24-18. Later in the fourth, Eagles were driving again. Moncrief hits Spencer for an 18-yard gain. Spencer hit fumbles, but the offense would recover and retain possession. Moncrief, again, this time to Silva for a 17-yard gain, and then calling his own number and scoring a touchdown from 6 yards out to make it, after the extra point, 25-24. And for all the Moneyball participants, that's why you go for 2 when you're down by 2 scores, because they made it, and then they just needed the extra point to take the lead, 25-24. Rudy Stokes threw another interception on the next drive. This went to Kangas, but crucially, the Giants' defense would hold and force the Eagles to punt and not extend the lead. Then Stokes found his tight end Marcus Rudolph for a 19-yard gain. He carried it himself, Stokes did, for a 10-yard gain, and then got them in range for a 35-yard field goal, which they hit to take the lead 27-25 with just under 3 minutes to go in the game. Philadelphia's final drive, they had an incomplete pass, got called for a false start, 2 consecutive sacks. All that led to a 4th and 21, which they were unable to convert, and the Giants held on for the tight victory. Rudy Stokes threw a couple of picks, but had 84 yards rushing and a touchdown. Jonathan Perez, 130 yards rushing on just 19 carries, 2 touchdowns for him. And Andrew Moncrief, a touchdown passing and running, but 3 big interceptions in his first start as the Giants came away with the victory. The Bears and the Buccaneers played in a tight defensive slugfest, with the Bears ultimately coming out on top. Tampa Bay punted on their first drive, but an excellent punt pinned the Bears at the 10-yard line, and then Lewis's first pass was intercepted by Jeffrey Cullum and returned for a pick 6. Tampa Bay taking the early 7-0 lead. The Bears then would drive into Bucs territory, aided by a defensive penalty on what would have been a failed 3rd and 4. But at the Tampa Bay 40-yard line, they were stuffed on 4th and 1 and turned the ball over on downs. Later in the second quarter, Gerald Lewis would complete a 44-yard screen pass to Stanley Segovia. That would lead to a Ricky Dean 32-yard field goal, making it 7-3. Later in the second quarter, Lewis ran for a 30-yard gain. He threw to Jose Malero for a 14-yard gain, and then threw a touchdown pass from 11 yards out to Pat Flexen, putting the Bears on top 10-7. And that really was the offense for the game. In the second half, the Tampa Buccaneers had 6 possessions, none of which crossed midfield. Their very last attempt was their final one, where on a 4th and 9, they gained 8 yards, falling just short, and the ball was spotted exactly at midfield. So that was the farthest they got in the second half, was to midfield, stuffed just short on a 4th down. So yet another close, heartbreaking defensive loss for the Buccaneers as they fall 10-7 to the Bears. Jeffrey Cullum, all the scoring for Tampa Bay with that pick 6. Stanley Segovia, 68 yards from scrimmage on 12 carries. Gerald Lewis, 133 passing yards and 72 rushing yards on the day. The Rams and the Falcons played in a very close back-and-forth game, with the Rams ultimately coming out on top. Sean Lyons would start out shaky, throwing an interception on his very first play to Jason Bumbarger. Rams would quickly turn that into a touchdown, with Avila passing it from 5-yard touchdown to Bruce Dawson. Though later in the first quarter, Lyons would find Rafael Rosario for 15 and 13-yard gains. Then he would complete an 18-yarder to his tight end, Feng Song, and that would lead to a Sharice Hinojosa 27-yard touchdown run for the Falcons, putting them on top for the first time. Going on to the second quarter, it was tied at 10 when Avila was picked off by Adrian Gerner. 4 plays later, Lions found Victor Romani for a 5-yard touchdown, putting the Falcons back on top. In the third quarter, Lions hit Romani again for a short gain, but Romani was hit and fumbled. It was recovered by defensive end Richard Lucia, and that led to a Rams field goal, cutting into the lead. And then later, the Rams get the ball back and put on a 10-play, 71-yard drive. Avila 7 of 8 on that drive, including a touchdown pass to his tight end, Kerry Slomba, from 14 yards out. And that would put the Rams back on top 20-17. Then the teams would go back and forth down the field. First, Atlanta, Lions finding Romani again for 18, and then Ikwebuike for a 22-yard gain. That would lead to a second Sharice Hinojosa touchdown, this one rushing it in from 5 yards, putting Atlanta on top. But the Rams would respond, Avila finding Anthony Larry, a 25-yard pass, and then a 24-yarder to Scott Baldwin, then Larry again for a 9-yard touchdown. Rams going right down the field and retaking the lead 27-24. But Atlanta wasn't done. Rafael Rosario had a 23-yard carry. Michael Fulmer had a 37-yard run. And then Lions found Romani, this time again in the passing game, with an 11-yard touchdown. And the Falcons were back on top. 31-27 was the score at that point. Rams took over. Avila was 6 of 6 for 75 yards on his next drive. ending with a 12-yard touchdown pass to Anthony Larry. That made it 34-31, and 5 consecutive drives with lead changes. So 5 consecutive touchdowns, 5 consecutive lead changes. And then the Rams' defense was finally able to break the pattern. Atlanta got to midfield, but after a holding call, they were stuck on 2nd and 20, could not convert, had to punt. Rams, though, went 3 and out, so the Falcons' defense did their job, stopped the Rams as well. But with the change of field position, the ensuing punt was down at the Atlanta 11-yard line with 2:50 to go. Needing a field goal to tie it, Atlanta unfortunately went nowhere in 4 plays, immediately turned the ball over on downs. That led to a Rams insurance touchdown in the final minute to make it a 10-point game. And then Lions, unfortunately, in a desperation heave on the game's final play when it meant nothing, threw a second interception to Jason Bumbarger. So on paper, it's a 10-point win for the Rams, but a stronger story when you look at the play-by-play. Lions started the game with an interception, ended it with a meaningless interception, and then in between was 27 of 46, 246 yards and 3 touchdowns, and for a while was going toe-to-toe, drive for drive with Philip Avila. Avila, 68 passes, 43 completions, 485 yards, 5 touchdowns on the day, including 2 to Anthony Larry. So they go back and forth. Ultimately, it is the Rams who come out ahead. 41-31 is your final score. As for the rest of the Week 12 scoreboard, Washington handles New England 22-10. JaVale Nee, another great game. 10 receptions, 130 yards for him. Cleveland blows out Cincinnati 53-0. Cleveland as a team rushed the ball 57 times for 325 yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. Also, kicker Abel Chapa, 6 of 6 on field goals and 5 of 5 on extra points. So 23 total points, perfect on 11 kicks for the Cleveland kicker. Houston fell to Kansas City, 40-24 was the final. Both quarterbacks were in fine form. Chop and Nebel threw for 2 passing touchdowns each. They each rushed for a rushing touchdown and had no turnovers combined. So excellent days from both of them. Kansas City ultimately putting up 40 and winning there. Carolina beat Arizona 51-3. Theo Scribner, stepping in for the injured Dakota Link, had a monster day, 38 of 52, 463 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Each of the top 3 Carolina receivers had at least 100 yards and a touchdown on the day. Seattle beat the Chargers 34-14. Wide receiver Joe Edmonds had a great day for the Seahawks, 10 catches, 105 yards, and 3 touchdown receptions. Aguilera had 2 rushing touchdowns, but did throw 3 interceptions on the day. San Francisco beat Minnesota 24-14. Vontae Nebel led the way for the 49ers, 21 carries, 104 rushing yards, and a touchdown. Vegas beat Jacksonville 25-14 is your final. James Blank, a big day, 10 catches, 128 yards for him. And then on Monday night, Pittsburgh beat Baltimore 30-13. Ariel Lemon Jr. acquitting himself nicely. 17 carries, 107 yards, and a touchdown for him. So, with all that said, here are my players of the week, and I have to call out Theo Scribner for a great game, 463 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Jonathan Perez of the Giants, Anthony Larry of the Rams, Antonio Arellano of the Cowboys, and Jamie Ramirez of the Dolphins, all with over 100 yards from scrimmage and a couple of touchdowns each. On the defensive side, some defensive tackles with great TFLs. Jeffrey Jesse of Baltimore, 5.5 tackles for loss and 2 sacks. Robert Miller of Washington, also 5.5 tackles for loss and a sack. Richard Crawford added 5 more TFLs to his great season total for the Chiefs. Daniel Mendoza for the Seahawks broke up 3 passes and intercepted 3 more. Fantastic day for him. And then Rob Downing of Denver, a special teams player of the week for him, for going 4 for 4, including a 51-yarder, and including those 2 crucial kicks, one to tie it in regulation and one to win it in overtime. So, congratulations to these 10 players on being named my selections for the players of the week for Week 12. For a quick injury update, the Panthers and Cowboys are going to miss their franchise quarterbacks for one more week with those ankle injuries. Russell Garbrandt injured again for the Broncos, this time with a calf injury. Took him out of the game. He will miss next week as well. Green Bay suffered a couple of injuries in their Simsgiving win. Richard Campos with a pec muscle and Benjamin Hanbury with an MCL bruise. Both are going to miss a few weeks. And then the Rams, Hector Faulkner, 33-year-old guard, had hamstring injury. He will be miss most of the rest of the regular season. It wasn't all bad news, though. Some recovered players that I want to mention. Baltimore defensive end Nick Concepcion is back. Gordon Wilburn for the Broncos recovered. And then some linemen, Colts guard Stephen Gibson, Jets guard David McNeil, and Washington's tackle Charles C.A. All recovered and should be back in their active lineups next week. So, with those results, here are things, how they stand in the AFC. The Chiefs have the second best record in football, but they're behind the Broncos, so they're a 10-2 wild card as of right now. Raiders also having a wild card in the West with 7 wins. East, absolutely a two-team race between the Jets and Dolphins. It could come down to their rematch later this season. Titans holding on to a slim one-game lead over the Jaguars in the South. Ditto the Steelers over the Browns in the North. Browns did win one, though, so if they can win the rematch, they will pass the Steelers on head-to-head, so both teams controlling their own destiny there. As for the wild card, Raiders holding on to that last spot. Browns just a game behind. And then Bills and Jaguars and Chargers a game behind the Browns. As for the NFC, the Packers have brought it to just a one-game gap between them and the Lions. And again, the Packers have the season sweep and a 4-0 division record to boot. Both of them looking playoff bound as well. Panthers still a 4-game lead over the Falcons and the Saints in the South. Commanders holding strong at 9-2 with the Cowboys at 8-3 over in the East, looking like a two-team race there. And then the West, the Rams have a 3-game lead. Seahawks still holding on to what would be that final playoff spot, currently at 6-5. And then just behind them are the Giants at 5-6, and then a lot of 4-7 teams. So that is how things are shaking up in the NFC. And now just a quick peek at the current draft order, which we'll keep updated through the end of the regular season. AFC still with 4 of the top 5 picks, with Cincinnati, Baltimore, New England, and Indianapolis. And then the 2 traded picks, Detroit having 6 overall thanks to the Tampa Bay trade from last year. Tampa Bay trading up to number 2 to get Travis Kingery. And then Houston gained an extra first last year from the Rams, have to give it back this year. So the Rams are picking 7th, as well as whatever their true final pick ends up being later in the round. So, as you said, this week we are revisiting Pierce's tiers. I have 10 tiers in this iteration, and we're going to go from the top down. And of course, these are generally ranked in terms of where I think teams are performing. But the most important thing is grouping like teams together, so there might be a bit of fuzziness in the individual team rankings. They're not to be taken purely scientifically. But starting at the top, we have what I call our last hurrah, which are the Broncos, Rams, and Commanders. These are teams who have been there before, looking to get back to the big game, but this could be their last season, at least in the current iterations of their roster. They got a lot of cap troubles coming up. A lot of big bombs in terms of retirement news. They got a lot. Any retirements could bring a lot of dead cap to hit in 2027, which could very much curtail what the teams are able to do and the ability they have to plug any holes that come up from those retirements. And we seem to say it every year that the window is closing on these teams, and then they're back on top in contention. So fool me once, fool me twice. I don't know. It does seem, though, that the window has to close eventually, and money might make that happen in 2027. But as for right now, all these three teams still very much at the top of their game, still very dangerous and very active in the playoff races. The next tier down is getting real crowded in here for Carolina and Miami. These are two teams who were super highly rated coming into the season, and for good reason. Had really kind of put all their eggs into these next few seasons basket. Haven't traded away all their picks, but trading away picks to acquire players and getting ready for a championship run. They are very much, though, in the midst of their conference and division races. Carolina, that top four, all those division winners really close together, 2 or 3 losses apiece. So even if Carolina is able to win their division, seeding could become a big issue, as there are a lot of teams very close in rank. And the Dolphins are just trying to win their division with losing one head-to-head game with the Jets. So Jets have the tiebreaker now. They're going to revisit, I believe, in week 17 or 18. But yeah, from number 1 seed in the AFC last year to fighting to not be a wild card, very crowded for these two teams who have a lot to play for, but kind of a lot to prove to justify the player strategies and the trading strategy they've been using to build their rosters the way they have. Conversely, we have some teams on a meteoric rise who are outperforming where we maybe thought they would be at the start of the season. So just to give some examples to pull from one source, Alex Fall's preseason talent rankings had Kansas City ranked 19th, Detroit ranked 20th, and the Jets ranked 22nd. And yet here they all are, 8 wins or better, proving that, it's only all that matters is the games that get played on Sundays. There are certainly some tough games to go, but all these teams are on the way up and impressing and looking to, again, like the tiers above them, make a push into the playoffs. But having said that, don't sleep on the Cowboys, Packers, and Steelers. These are teams who are very dangerous, have put together very good seasons, and could absolutely do some damage in the playoffs. Just look at Sims Giving if you need any other proof. So if you forgot that these three teams are good, that the Cowboys are 8-3, and that the Packers and Steelers are 7-4, don't forget, don't overlook them. Just because you've got, the teams on the tiers above them, don't sleep on these three teams. They could absolutely make a run late in the season. And now you've got teams that are right on that bubble. These are the 7th and 8th seeds currently in each conference. So right now the Raiders at 7-4 hold that last wild card, with the Browns just a game behind. The Raiders could have a tough schedule coming up, so the Browns could absolutely sneak their way into the playoffs. And then in the NFC, Seattle is number 7, and the Giants are number 8, just a game behind. So Seattle has the inside track, but still very much anything can happen. And that's not to say that there aren't other teams that could still challenge for the playoffs. It's just that those teams are at least a couple games behind, would have to make up lost ground, and then worry about tiebreakers. So right now, it seems like a close race between these 4 teams for the last playoff spots, one in each conference. And then we have some teams that maybe are not in contention for those wild cards, but could absolutely play spoilers based on their talent level and the teams they're playing at the rest of the season. We just saw Buffalo put up a strong fight against the Cowboys. So yeah, any of these teams could get hot and could strike and could shift things up, if not for themselves and for other teams. Buffalo might have the toughest remaining schedule in the league. They got to play Pittsburgh, at Miami, at Carolina, Washington, and then at Jacksonville before closing out the season against New England. So that's an awfully tough schedule, but winning any of those games, an upset against Pittsburgh, for example, could absolutely shake up the playoff races for those other teams. Similarly, Chicago still has to play Detroit. They're at Cleveland, and then they eventually go and play Green Bay. And then the Chargers are hosting the Rams. They go to Tennessee to play the Titans. They host the Vegas Raiders, and then ultimately the Chiefs as well. So again, tough games. But if they could win even one of those, they could absolutely upset the balance in those other divisions. So don't overlook the matchups where these teams are present. Could absolutely have a big impact in the playoff race. Next, we have a playoff spot that someone's going to get. It seems either the Jaguars or the Titans are going to get the automatic bid from the AFC South, be the number 4 seed, and probably lose to a very good wildcard team at home. Someone's going to win the AFC South. It's probably going to be one of these two teams. We'll see who it is by the end of the season. Other teams that are already looking ahead to some big changes that they might have coming up. Talking about Atlanta, Minnesota, and Philadelphia. Atlanta, I don't know with Rashawn Lyons what the plan is, if he's going to get a long-term deal. Again, remember that he is currently playing on the 1-year contract that was his 5th-year option that the Patriots paid for before shipping him to Washington, who sent him to Denver, who sent him to Atlanta. So no idea what Atlanta has planned for him. If they're going to want to pick him up, I still think he throws too many interceptions. But yeah, so it could be a big change coming as Atlanta decides what to do about that, about Lions. Minnesota has to decide what to do with Sinnock. He's going to want $1 bajillion. I don't think his play on the field has kept up with his overall, so I could see them parting ways and him trying to land with another team. And then maybe the Vikings look for a quarterback in the draft. That's all supposition, though. We'll find out more during extension season. The Eagles, it does seem, have moved on from Aaron Poole and are ready for something new. So that one seemed a little more definite that there is a change coming. The other two, it's more supposition at this point, but it would not surprise me. But yeah, look to these 3 NFC teams, see what they're doing at their quarterback position in extensions, but especially in the offseason. We got a few teams further at the bottom that are mostly gathering data. These teams have young quarterbacks. They want to see what these quarterbacks can do. They want to tweak their game plans, want to make sure they're getting the best out of these players, want to make sure guys are getting snaps. Now, that's not to say they can't jump up into the spoiler category where I had Buffalo and the Chargers and Bears. I just think so these teams could absolutely pull off some surprise wins and upset the playoff picture. I think their biggest priority right now, though, is figuring out their players and their schemes, getting guys snaps, and figuring out how they want to build their teams going forward, as hopefully these young quarterbacks will take them on the way up. And then we have our final 4 teams who are probably already draft scouting. That's the Ravens, Bengals, Colts, and Patriots. These teams have a combined 5 wins so far this season, and 2 of them are against each other. So now, again, the Ravens are out of their scheme change madness, so we'll see if they play themselves out of a top 5 pick here down the stretch. Bengals with 1 win, Patriots with 1 win, and Colts with 2. I think fair to say these teams, all of whom have their first-round picks, are already thinking about next year, who they're going to take in the top 5, and how they're going to grow their teams from there. So that is it for all 32 teams in my update of Pierce's tiers. Let me know what you think. Let me know who's underrated, overrated, not talked about enough. We'll go from there. And we're going to go right into Week 13, which is going to start off on Thursday night with an all-LA battle. Technically, the Rams are the visiting team. They're going to play the Chargers. In the early Sunday slot, we have Pittsburgh going to Buffalo to play the Bills, and then Detroit will be at the New York Giants. Giants again, and Bills both trying to work in those spoiler roles, as I mentioned. Then in the afternoon, Kansas City going to Las Vegas to play the Raiders. Huge game for both of these teams who have playoff aspirations and tough schedules to end the year. They both absolutely want to win here to build momentum for that final stretch. Then Philadelphia is at Green Bay to play the Packers, also in the afternoon. On Sunday night, we have Denver at Seattle. And then Monday night, we finish things off with a real banger, Miami at Washington. 2 9-2 teams. 2 teams that could be in contention for the top seed, but are also being chased by very ambitious teams in the Jets and Cowboys. Jets currently have the lead in that division. Cowboys are one game back. But yeah, huge game for both the Dolphins and the Commanders. And it's all on prime time. So we will see that game happen on Monday night. Hope you'll tune in for that one. That is everything I have for this edition of the SimNFL show. Thank you so much for stopping by and listening. And as I say to all users in all of our sims, good luck and have fun.